And welcome back to Crit and Crit. I am Axion,
I'm Scint.
and we are continuing with the very, very pretty and very, very depressing Hollow Knight, and the equally depressing and significantly less pretty Metamorphosis.
What, you don't like things that might be cockroaches?
I mean, this cockroach is, or whatever my character is supposed to be, is kind of cute. But,
Okay, fair.
I'm pretty sure that's not what Gregor looks like.
Well, that's actually interesting because varying translations are never consistent on what kind of bug he is. The only consensus is giant insect of some sort. Yeah,
Yep.
sometimes been translated as beetle, sometimes it's cockroach. The first one I was introduced to was cockroach, so I tend to go with that one because, well, you don't forget your first.
That's also kind of the one that's kind of entered, like, cultural osmosis. Right, that's
Yep.
where I was going. Because when I first heard of Kafka and Metamorphosis, just from hearing about people talking about it and reading around it on the internet, it always said cockroach. It was only when I read the book myself or when I heard other people talking about it who had read different versions, that I just heard a more generic insect or something like beetle.
And that's unfortunately just kind of the issue you're going to run into when you run into a text that has been translated from the original. You're going to get the basic story, but the specific diction will vary based on who had their hands on it.
Yep. But we are not really here to talk about the lamentations of translated texts.
Yet. I am sure that will come up eventually, depending on what we pick up for various books. But yeah, I believe our topic today was basically Gregor's primary concern as well, which is, well, money, the stress from not having it, and the lack of rest you get from stressing about it. Because, well, as mentioned before, when we discussed how Gregor is the one his family relies on up until his strange change comes over him, Gregor was the sole breadwinner for the family. And having revisited this, I do want to correct something. I don't believe the text actually mentions that his father is too old to work. It's more that his father has given up on work because his business ventures failed, which is why Gregor is having to work in the first place. His father racked up a lot of debts with his failed bid at entrepreneurship, and now Gregor has to clean up the mess, and his father just sits around all day.
Okay, I stand corrected. I remembered incorrectly. That's my fault.
That's okay. But yeah, that also could be a translation thing. Various texts might change it, because the gist is still his father sits at home, whiles away the day, sitting in his armchair while Gregor goes out, works the job he can't stand, and we know from the first line that Gregor doesn't sleep well because he awoke from feverish dreams and restless sleep to discover he's turned into a giant insect. So, yeah, Gregor is exhausted, and his family, up until they're forced to because he can't go to work anymore, seems to have no inclination to do anything to alleviate this on him.
And while we can, to some degree, give his sister and maybe his mother a pass on that, because his mother is clearly depicted as not in the best of health, and his sister is outright said to be too young to have most jobs and to be, preparing for, like, higher education.
Which, again, Gregor has to pay for because no one else in the family will.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't want to give his mom too much of a pass because we are equal opportunity in calling out when people are being jerk faces. And his mother is more sympathetic, but ultimately she does fail in the role of caregiver when it comes right down to it, kind of leaving her daughter in the lurch in that regard.
I don't disagree there. Okay,
so
here's the boss
yeah.
I just fought.
But yeah, like, Gregor, as we mentioned before with our plot recap, is primarily concerned with, if I am a giant bug, I cannot go to work. He doesn't really seem concerned about, oh yes, I'm a bug, and what will I do with my life? It's, I'm going to miss the train, and then my boss is going to yell at me. I can't call in sick because the company doctor is going to say I'm faking it because, well, if we acknowledge any sort of, health issues, we might have to acknowledge we've been overworking our people, which the boss, we get the impression, absolutely does with Gregor, who hasn't missed a day of work in 5 years, which is way more than most people I know can say, self-included.
Or it may just be as simple as, if we acknowledge that you are sick, we have to pay for your treatment, and it's bad enough that we have to pay you for your work.
That's getting a little more into it than I had anticipated with this topic, but yeah, I could kind of see that given how Gregor seems to pay his boss. One sec.
So while she is dealing with a fuzzy puppy, we have here a little note from the map maker guy that we met earlier. So we will have to pop back to town and see about buying a map expansion now that we're mostly done with this first area.
And I'm back. Sorry about that. She had been settled before, so we didn't put her out. And now she's out.
Yep. Puppy do puppy things.
Yep. But yeah, so Gregor is already under an insane amount of stress because he is the sole breadwinner for a family that does not seem inclined to do anything about it except worry about the finances and be upset when he's late for work because if he gets fired, they lose their income. We only actually see his father worried about how Gregor is affecting the family income, not, oh, my poor son, what has happened to you? It's, oh, well, there goes the paycheck. And yeah, no wonder Gregor's a mess. No wonder he's not sleeping well. No wonder we get an extended daydream about in 5 years I will have earned enough money that I can quit this awful, awful job that gets me up way too early and gets me too little sleeping, keeps me away from home for so long. Yeah, it's Gregor got dealt a bad hand, and I think it's far more relatable to many people than it has any right to be, with just that fantasy of one day I will be rich enough to never have to come to this place again and never see any of my coworkers that I know can't stand me or my boss that I know is taking advantage of me. And it's just, it hits pretty hard if you've ever gone through a rough job like that, because you can feel Gregor so hard in that moment, and you know just how stressful it is to go in and day out to a job that is tearing you apart from the inside. Pretend everything's okay because you got to keep morale up, or the boss is going to wonder why you're not doing such a good job, and you might lose the job that you need even if you don't want it because, well, your family can't eat the moral high ground.
Yep. And almost all of us have probably encountered some kind of job that is just as thankless and unlikable as Gregor's.
I don't miss retail. I'm just going to say that.
I was about to say, most of them are probably going to be some flavor of retail. I have been relatively lucky, quote unquote, in my life in that I have not worked a lot of retail. I had a very, very short-lived job as working as retail, like very basic retail, like bagging groceries and stuff like that. I never even got to the point of like running checkouts or anything, because I had complications.
Scheduling issues, I think you've told me.
Yep, scheduling issues where I had certain days due to various things that I could not work, and despite telling my prospective bosses that when I was first hired, that suddenly ceased to be something that was kept in mind when I was being scheduled for shifts.
Yeah, that comes up an awful lot. But yeah, it's actually funny we talk about retail because Gregor is a salesman. He's a traveling salesman, to be specific, so I am sure he is very used to this aspect of having to deal with customers who do not care and a boss who only cares about the bottom line. And yeah, it is very, very stressful to have to deal with people on that level for so long, to always be polite even when people are not returning the favor to you, because, well, you're not representing the store, the company, whatever very well if you happen to say, please don't talk to me like that, I'm a person too, I deserve respect. No, you are a sales drone and you exist for my abuse and my expired coupons. Yeah, I don't want to go back.
So say we all.
But,
Oh,
yeah, and like the stress and the lack of ability to rest and recover from it is a recurring theme throughout. Like, almost immediately, Gregor tries to go back to sleep because, I mean, if I woke up and I was turned into a bug, my first thought would be, this can't be real, I'm going back to sleep. But he can't, because his new body is uncomfortable in the way he's used to sleeping. And yeah, we don't really get a whole lot of detail about Gregor ever feeling well again, because his health rapidly deteriorates, not in any small part but due to his father throwing an apple at him that lodges in a very sensitive area. But yeah, Gregor is exhausted to begin with, run down by an overwork from a job, and then just everything else that happens to him, and he's left alone with no ability to cope, no help for it. So,
yep.
yep. And then, well, money becomes the concern for the family. Gregor can't care about it anymore. And he probably does, but no one can communicate it. No one can ask him, or they can ask him, but he can't answer them. So it's easy for them to forget about him as a person. He's just a giant bug to them because he can't say otherwise, which obviously adds to everyone's stress. But yeah, they get their jobs, they all worried about that, and the final straw for we can't deal with Gregor anymore is they've rented out a room to some people to get some extra money. They see Gregor and freak out, and the idea that they might lose that renter's income and also might be sued for emotional damages by the renters who were freaked out by the giant cockroach, that's the final straw. It's not just the caretaker fatigue we talked about, it's not only are you not contributing to the family, you are an active drain on our finances in a time we can't afford it. You need to go, which is really, really harsh. And I can't help but feel really, really bad for Gregor, as if we didn't already throughout all of this. And even though I do have some sympathy for his sister Greta, just due to the caretaker burnout and just the limits you can expect a reasonable person to have on how much grace they're able to give before they break, it's still really, really harsh.
Yep.
But yeah, I think this kind of just goes to show that, like, Kafka understands the importance of being rested and how that can help alleviate stress and how that can make things a lot more bearable, because it's just everyone seems to be described as exhausted by the end of things when Gregor finally dies, and they seem to kind of be slowly coming out of a lethargy with some room to breathe. So the rest of his family gets the benefit of that, and poor Gregor, who did absolutely nothing to deserve any of this, just gets to be an object lesson. And on that depressing note, I'm kind of out of ideas unless you got something to say.
I mean, it's really kind of a situation that almost every one of our listeners can probably identify with. How many of us have just... I was not expecting that to explode. Or for me to fall into a hole. It is not my night.
At least you're not a giant cockroach.
Nope, just a little, buggy dude. But, like, you mentioned working in retail, and how many people have stories upon stories upon stories of coming home from work exhausted, having dealt with some grouchy customer or grumpy boss or whatever millions of other problems that their job comes with. They can barely afford to make all their payments month to month. They can barely afford to keep up with the needs of themselves and their families. They certainly can't always afford to handle more expensive things like surprise expenses.
Surprise piranha plant. You almost had a surprise expense there yourself.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, how many horror stories have you heard of people who had some unexpected expense, like medical problems or some sudden debt coming due that they were unable to keep up with or had fallen behind on, or in some cases didn't even know about, or somebody dies, or something happens, and people are suddenly at their wits' end because they can't afford to take care of whatever this problem is. They can't obviously can't solve the issue themselves. Nowadays it's so common that it's just a thing that happens. You hear about somebody getting sick, or somebody having a death in the family, or somebody losing their job, and they say, please donate to my GoFundMe, or please send me some spare money on PayPal. And they post their story all over Facebook or whatever or Twitter or whatever their social media of choice is. And these people are relying on the kindness of strangers to survive. And
well, thank God they're not in a Kafka novel, because if you're relying on the kindness of strangers, you dead in Kafka land.
I was about to say, and it could get a whole lot worse, and I think this might be a good place to stop soon. I am pretty much out of what I was going to say anyway. That pretty much wraps it up. But it also seems like this is going to be kind of an important character coming up. This is the person in a dress. I think that's what that is.
Looks like, or a cape or something. But yep, so in that case, we will see you next time. Bye!
Yep. See ya!